Welcome to the 2026 edition of the MSU Latinx Film Festival. It's our fourth edition. We are here on the second day of the festival after a great opening night at the MSU Multicultural Center where we got things kicked off. Today we will be screening films in the MSU Library and the MSU Broad Art Museum. Longtime collaborators, very excited about both of those venues and the screenings that we have there. We will be wrapping up around midnight tonight with the concert at Urban Beat by Salsa Verde, always a highlight of the festival. And then we continue over the weekend in the city of Lansing at the Robin Theater with 3 screenings there, followed by another big concert at the Rio Town Clubhouse. And then we wrap up on Sunday with 3 films at Celebration Cinema in Lansing and a great closing reception and more live music. So we are thrilled to be celebrating the festival again. We are the largest Hispanic, Latino, Latin American, Latinx film festival in the state of Michigan and one of the biggest in the Great Lakes region. And we're so happy that people continue to come out and support us. Today in the studio, I am with Pedro Noel Doreste Rodriguez, Assistant Professor of Film Studies, Juan Carlos Rodriguez, Director of Vieques, Living Archive. The film will be screening shortly in the library, and Charles Abelman, Director of Call Me Huella, which will also be screening immediately after in the library. Thank you so much for joining us, for traveling from Washington, D.C. and Atlanta to be here. And bringing us films that we wouldn't otherwise have access to, and a spotlight on islands such as Puerto Rico and Cuba. I'd like to begin with a general question. I think a lot of our audience would like to know pathways to filmmaking and how people come to do the work they're doing. Juan Carlos, could you tell us just a little bit about how you became a filmmaker? I know you studied a lot of heavy academics and Marxist theory at Duke University. How did you end up making documentaries?
So I was always fascinated by documentaries, and I guess I began contemplating this idea of making a documentary, and I purchased a camera. I started recording interviews. Life got in the way, and then I came back to this project and continued to visit the island of Vieques, and 24 years later, I have my first movie. So that's basically the story.
Charles, I know you've had a long trajectory outside of filmmaking. What brought you to get behind the camera?
So my background's in international development and school leadership, and when I was head of the lab school at the University of Chicago, I did a project with students making a film about John Dewey and his work in China. And it was a really heady project, and to make it less heady, the kids made a film. I partnered with a filmmaker, and I got hooked on documentary filmmaking. I then was going to write a paper on online tutoring in China, and instead of writing a paper, I said, let's try and make a film. So my first film, English Hustle, follows the life of online tutors in China, and I find it addictive. It's this an incredible art form, and working with a team and getting to know subjects, and from there, I've just kept going.
One of the better addictions to suffer from, I would say. I have another question for both of you before we talk about your particular projects. Just a general question: what's the value of film festivals like this one at universities? We're on campus, off campus. What's it meant for you to have your film screened here and at other festivals?
I think the value of film festivals that are located on campuses is that the audience comes from faculty, students. A lot of interesting questions are part of the conversations, and it seems that it has a different vibe from the more industry-related film festivals, where the purpose of the festival is more about negotiating distribution for the films and all that. So they look perhaps at the marketing potential and the economic potential of the documentaries. While here, we are surrounded by epistemologies, curiosities, questions that are very fascinating, and the audience engage in a very strong conversation about issues of the present.
As a filmmaker, I love to have my films seen. That happens at film festivals. And it opens up a door for me to see how audiences react to film. at a university. It's great to have the student reaction. It's great to have faculty reaction. And this is a really special festival in that you both do programming on campus and in the local community and trying to bridge sort of town gown types of issues. So really value that. And then as a filmmaker being able to come to a festival, it's wonderful to be able to meet other filmmakers and network.
That's what we try to do. We try to do all of those things. Pedro, we invited you to program a slot in the festival because our festival is built on collaboration. And so we've always collaborated with the Film Studies program from the beginning in different ways. We just had a screening of Landrian, which you presented last night as part of the Film Collective, which was amazing. Really unique opportunity to see an amazing film. Thank you for contextualizing that so well for us and for our audience. It was a real gem in the program. So I'd like to ask you to talk just a little bit about the Film Studies Moving Image Workshop and what that is. That's our collaboration today. And then you could have programmed anything. So why did you decide to program Juan Carlos's film Vieques? What does it have to communicate to us today?
Right. So the Moving Image Workshop, this is my first year as its faculty sponsor. So it's actually does have its roots at the University of Chicago as well, sort of mimicking that workshop system. And it's really like a place where you share works in progress, rough drafts of papers. But this year we've been trying to make a push to include other media. So films, conference presentations, videographic criticism, and really making a push to get the grad students from other fields, not just the immediate film and media studies, to get involved. And so far it's been successful. We've had 10 presenters, or we will have 10 presenters this year, and we hope to keep it going with that busy schedule into the future. Juan's film, I've been trying to bring it to East Lansing for a while. I just didn't know what the venue would be. And I just thought... Vieques, the island municipality that his film treats, has been in the news lately, just generally because of the remilitarization of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico as the sort of trampoline for potential U.S. invasions of Latin America. And we all know that the sort of dress rehearsals for these types of military operations happened throughout the majority of the last century in Vieques. So it was a bit serendipitous to see that you were working on this film over the course of the last 20 years, really. But the fact that it came out in 2025, I thought gave us an opportunity to center the Caribbean and center how Puerto Rico has been instrumentalized historically, but also more dangerously in the present moment.
Juan Carlos, could you tell us a little bit about how you came to this project? And 20 years is a long time to be working on something. So what's it been like to complete the project and see it in front of audiences? Tell us the story.
Yeah, so I began working on the project in 1998. I visited Vieques. I became aware with the history of the impact of the military presence of the U.S. Navy on the island. The island was used for 60 years as a bombing site, among other activities that the military conducted there. The U.S. Marines also were conducting amphibious landings. There were a lot of training for military readiness on the island. These trainings impacted the environment and the health of the population in Vieques, created a lot of issues and challenges for the community. And there was a long tradition of struggle against the military presence in Vieques. So in 1999, once I completed the first round of interviews, trying to tell the story of the resistance in Vieques, there was an episode, a military security guard passed away due to an accidental bombing in Vieques. This created a new wave of protests, and finally in 2003, the U.S. Navy transferred the military activities elsewhere, and the land was transferred from the Navy to Fish and Wildlife. This with this new development, new challenges came to be part of the history of Vieques. I returned in 2004 to chronicle the first year of Vieques after the U.S. Navy, to look at the projects of the community, to follow some of the leaders that were involved in the protest, and now they were involved in these new initiatives. And I try to chronicle that moment. I always wanted to have a conversation with the community, and I built the film around these trips to Vieques and my conversations with different members of the community and leaders and all that. So after that, I realized that I was kind of developing an archive, and that didn't really come to mind previously in the project. So I was able to look at the materials years later and do a final round of visits to Vieques, and that also opened the door for the film to be a reflection on how, as you become engaged in covering, in trying to tell the story of a community, you build your own archive, and what does that mean? So the film is also a reflection on homemade archives that belong to larger communities, and how we as filmmakers engage in conversations. So after Hurricane Maria, new challenges came to Vieques, so I tried to chronicle those challenges. One of the larger issues that I followed throughout the years was the healthcare situation in Vieques. And unfortunately, due to the hurricane, Vieques lost its hospital. So basically, I built the film also as a way of looking at the consequences of demilitarization in Vieques, some of the pending questions, some of the open wounds that are still that are part of the dilemmas of the Vieques in the present. And the film came out at a moment that also was a sort of, surprise to us, which is that we have seen that in Puerto Rico, the military activity for training purposes is coming back, and that has raised a lot of concern. So I think the film is also speaking to this moment and looking at some of the challenges of militarization and demilitarization, and some of the concerns of the communities that have been affected by military activities.
I wish it was not the case that we had a film that was speaking to these things of which you speak that are happening in the present. It would be nice to have a living archive that has nothing to do with similar political and military activities that are taking place in the region, but unfortunately they are. And we are glad that you're here so that we can incorporate this into our conversation of your film after the screening. We've got lots of time to talk, so that's part of the purpose of our festival, is to create spaces where we can talk about things that don't often get the space they deserve. So thank you for being with us and sharing your work. Looking forward to it. Charles, you reached. You're an example of someone who reached out to us, not to us directly, but then you got put on our radar, and so we had a nice conversation. And I realized that you're associated with New Day Films, which is a great film collective that I'd like you to speak about for people who are not aware of. But also, I was very interested in the way in which you're also in some ways creating an archive of sorts of a particular artist on a different island called Cuba, also going through some hard times. And this concept of outsider art seen exemplified in one figure. So can you talk to us a little bit about your project, Komiwaya, how it came to be, and how you got involved in this story? And I imagine as a U.S. citizen filming in Cuba is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. So tell us your story.
Sure. So in 2013, I went with a group of school heads as a delegation to Cuba visiting schools. It was before making any films. I was just there to really share, talk with other principals, school directors, and learn. And during that trip, I came across this artist. I actually saw some of his art in a gallery. I found it really intriguing. I left the group and I tracked him down in his apartment. I forgot the program I was on and ended up spending about 4 or 5 hours with him. And he was intriguing. He clearly had mental health issues. He clearly had a lot of insights. He was a big talker, and we just somehow connected. I went back to Cuba again with a delegation, met him again, and after sort of making this transition to doing films, I reached out to him and his family and asked whether he would be willing to grant me access. And then I'd have to negotiate what it's like to be an American working in Cuba. So I do it as being supporting the Cuban people. I got permission from the local cultural authorities to be able to make the film. That was my insurance policy by not going through Havana to get permission to make the film. And it really tries to tell his story through his words, through his art, and through his family. He's a complicated figure. He's had 3 wives. He has a number of different kids. His kids think different things of him. Some love him, some do not. And he's complex, and he's representative of this body of art, which is known as outsider art, that Roger Cardinal coined as a term in 1972. Often people with mental health issues, often people who have a need to create. It's not clear how old he is. People debate whether he was born in 1931 or 1941. He's not young, and he creates every day. And he has to be resourceful because right now in Cuba, it's a really difficult time, getting more difficult. Today's New York Times article talks about the U.S. potentially actually having a blockade, not just blocking oil, but blocking other shipments going into Cuba. So he has really no materials to work with. And he finds whatever he can find, and he creates. He originally was a woodworker, so he knows how to sculpt. He knows how to paint. He also does multimedia. And it's been an incredible opportunity to sort of get to know more about Cuba through him and through his family.
There's also a connection to the short film that we screened, the world premiere last night, No Mal. So you started one project, and you had a spin-off project from that, which was a really beautiful story for a short film. Can you just tell us a little bit about No Mal?
Sure.
It's a beautiful...
So I try to always work with local cinematographers as well as young cinematographers so that I can sort of share my leadership skills and what I know about, and I can gain from them and support locals. And my DP is from that community, a wonderful guy, really trained as a self-taught photographer who then became interested in filmmaking. And through this project, I've gotten to know him and his struggles and his challenges. And he had challenges both with a romance that went south, as well as really getting addicted to social media, talking about the political situation in Cuba. And as I heard about that and heard about how he pulled himself out of that, I approached him and said, can we tell this story? And, he was very open to that. And what he did is created a social media platform for filming local musicians in his community that he posts on YouTube. And that's his productive way of making sure he's not on social media. He doesn't get paid to do it. He uses his bicycle, a backpack, a tripod, bungee cords, his camera, and has documented local musicians in his community. And it's a really amazing, different look at someone in Cuba being resourceful, trying to do something to celebrate the arts and be productive at a time that's so difficult, where there's really no work and there's no supplies. So it was a short piece. It's only 10 minutes long, but it hopefully gives attention to him and raises awareness of his IMS project on YouTube.
So again, one addiction can be better than another. There is a Michigan connection to Comehuaya. Could you speak about that really quickly?
Yeah. So the composer for Call Me Waya, his name's Lleno Delgado. He lives just about 20 minutes here from campus. And I met him on my first trip. And I ultimately invited him to be a guest artist at one of the schools that I was working at. And ultimately, he came every year and did summer programs and programs for students about Cuban music. And when I came to do this project, I reached out to Yeno, who's from the same community as the artist, and said, would he like to help me with the music for the film? And he did. And ultimately, he was living in Cuba before and is now here and married to someone from Michigan. So he'll be here today, and it's been great to have a mini reunion with him and have time to see him.
That's a beautiful thing. Thank you all for being here and being a part of this edition of the festival. Hope you come back in the future in 2 years when we'll have an even bigger festival and more films, and maybe you'll have time. 20 years is a long time. I don't know if you can you do one in 2 years, and we'll try to bring it back. Thank you so much. Please check out all the films that we have, and see you at the festival.